You think you know the story of Jesus, but you don't. You're trapped in a cycle of belief, disbelief, and blind hostility, and you're not even the one deciding what you believe. Admit it, your entire worldview is just a copy-paste of what you were told to think as a child. Most people wouldn't. They'd rather fight, scream, and rewrite history than face the fact that their absolute truth is someone else's total lie. It wasn't an accident that the world divided over one man. It was a calculated collision of incompatible realities. Whether he was a miracle worker or a myth, the truth doesn't actually matter anymore, because we've already weaponized the debate to justify our own existence. Once you see the pattern, it stops being a religious argument, and it becomes the blueprint for why human civilization is constantly at war with itself. To see why we are still fighting, we have to look at the anatomy of the story itself. There is a silence at the center of the Roman Empire that screams. We have meticulous records of provincial tax receipts, grain shipments, and the obscure movements of minor Roman bureaucrats, yet the most important figure in Western history leaves behind no contemporary forensic fingerprint. No birth certificate, no court transcripts, no Roman administrative footprint during his alleged lifetime. Skeptics call it a vacuum, but for the believer, it is a veil. This administrative silence isn't just a historical gap, it is a structural impossibility. How does a man who supposedly shatters the foundations of the most organized legal system in the ancient world vanish from its records entirely until decades after his death? It forces you to choose. Either history was suppressed with a level of precision that defies reality, or the foundation of your entire cultural identity is built on a ghost. Consider the implications of this void. If he existed as the texts claim, he was a massive anomaly in a state that prided itself on total documentation. The Roman obsession with order is why we know the name of a baker in a forgotten corner of Gaul, but not the man who allegedly brought down the religious elite in their most volatile province. This silence is the first piece of evidence that what we have been handed is not raw history, but a refined, curated mythology designed to fill the exact gap left by the absence of facts. It is the perfect container. Because there is no record, you can project anything onto him. You can make him a revolutionary, a god, a peasant, or a king. The silence is not a lack of evidence, it is the engine of the entire movement. It forces every subsequent generation to build their own Jesus, because the real one is impossible to locate in the archives of power. This silence was the perfect seed for the weaponization of history. Look at the Edict of Milan in 313 AD. Before this, the story was a fringe movement, dangerous and localized. After, it was the iron fist of the state. Constantine didn't just adopt a religion, he seized a narrative. He took the story of a man who died for his rejection of power and turned it into the ultimate justification for imperial control. Suddenly, the cross wasn't just a symbol of suffering, it was a banner for war. Every crusade, every burning at the stake, and every sectarian divide that followed was just a continuation of this conversion. The story became a state-sanctioned weapon, used to define who belonged to the civilization and who had to be purged. We aren't fighting over a man, we are fighting over a tool of authority that was sharpened over 17 centuries of blood. Think about the psychological toll of this weaponization. It created a binary world, the saved and the damned, the believer and the heretic. When the Roman state adopted this narrative, it essentially turned a localized Palestinian sect into a global mechanism of obedience. By aligning the myth with the state, they ensured that questioning the myth was equivalent to treason against the empire. This is the origin of the hostility you feel when you question the story today. It has been encoded into the cultural DNA for nearly 2 millennia. We are not just debating a theological point, we are unraveling a state-controlled identity that has been used to justify wars of conquest, the expansion of empires, and the systematic suppression of any view that dared to deviate from the established orthodoxy. The story was never meant to be a record of a life. It was meant to be the architecture of an empire. To understand how a ghost became a god, we have to look at the timeline, not as a holy history, but as a masterclass in narrative control. 0, or 4, or whenever the calendar says, the timeline opens with a manufactured crisis, a girl's claim, a king's paranoid slaughter, and a family's strategic disappearance, setting the stage for a legend that thrives on secrecy. A figure emerges from the desert, not just as a teacher, but as a deliberate provocateur whose every act, wine, healing, conflict, seems designed to fracture the existing power structure. He selects 12 loyalists, a tactical team for an ideological insurgency. He walks into the capital, a calculated trap he sets for his own capture. He is betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, a transaction that, in our analysis, marks the exact point where a man's radicalism was converted into a state-managed martyrdom. He is publicly executed to ensure his finality, yet the narrative pivots on the trope of the empty tomb, turning a dead radical into an immortal symbol. It is not history, it is an engineered origin story. Every beat of that sequence is designed to maximize emotional resonance rather than historical accuracy. The slaughter of the infants, a direct mirror of the Moses narrative, is a trope used to build a heroic pedigree out of thin air. The desert emergence, the provocation of the elite, the betrayal by one of his own. These are not just events, they are literary devices that turn a human life into a narrative of tragedy and triumph. And the empty tomb? That is the ultimate pivot point. By removing the body, the narrative removes the possibility of empirical refutation. You cannot prove a ghost did not walk. You can only choose to believe the story or be branded an outsider. It is a masterpiece of narrative construction, ensuring that the legend can never be killed by the facts, because the facts have been systematically replaced by the power of the symbol itself. So look at the evidence. We have a story with no contemporary record, a narrative hijacked by state power, and a billion people living their lives based on a claim that cannot be proven or destroyed. Now that you see the machine, you are standing at the threshold of a choice. Is this a foundation for human meaning, or is it a psychological cage designed to keep you from asking why you really believe what you believe? If the evidence is missing and the power is manufactured, why are you still holding on? You aren't just an observer anymore. You are the judge of your own reality. You can walk away thinking this is just a story about a man from Nazareth, or you can finally admit that the reason you care so much is that deep down, you're terrified that you might be wrong. Everyone has a truth they refuse to let go of, because the moment you admit your truth is relative, your entire reality starts to crumble. And humanity? We would rather burn the world down than let that happen. The question isn't whether you're right, it's why you're so afraid to find out.